the program, the talk has a different title. It was a different talk, in fact. And after some discussion, arriving here and seeing the room and the size of the group, and having done a workshop over the last 2 days, I felt, I don't know why, it's this sort of intuition thing, that this might be a better topic of conversation. And it turns out that the title aligns very well with the title of the next talk, which is Doug's one. So, the navigating complexity using agility. That's my topic. So let's start with the question of what is a system? So when we talk about organisations and the work that we do, we usually refer to them as systems of some kind or other. So what is a system? So we go into just a quick dictionary definition there. A set of connected things or parts forming a complex whole, or a set of principles or procedures according to which something is done. Now, if I had a couple of hours to do this talk, I would turn it over to you at this point in time and ask you to talk among yourselves. But instead, I'm just going to say, hold this question for later. All right, perhaps during the panel it might come up. But there'll be a few questions that appear throughout this, and I want you to give some thought to. The question is, what is not a system? So if you look at those definitions, what is not a system? We're going to, that wasn't the thing that was expected. Let's try again. So, in thinking about different kinds of systems, various people have, categorized them in different ways. And some of you might be familiar with this picture. It's from a man called Ralph Stacey, when he's looking at the parameters of technology on one side and the requirements on the other. I'm talking about how, when the requirements are well known, technology is well known, you're working in a simple space, and so on. We're not going to look at this. But I found out only a few weeks ago, actually, that Ralph Stacey actually disowns this diagram now. He doesn't promote it, he doesn't believe in it. But there's a newer one, some of you might be familiar with, called knjegovo, which is similar, breaking systems down to obvious, complicated, complex, and chaotic, with disorder in the middle there, where pretty much anything can fall into. And they're useful. They're useful to think about. Useful to think about what kind of work is needed to be done, what kind of explorations in each of those spaces. But I want to look at something a little simpler. We're not going to look at those. This way. An alternative way of categorizing systems. It's binary. I like binary. So I said the systems are either mechanical or they're organic, and that's what I'm going to explore today. First of all, we'll look at a little bit of a breakdown of each of these kinds of systems and why I consider them so very different, and there is sort of a hard line. Here's a few pictures of mechanical systems. That's an IKEA plan. You get the idea. And organic systems, on the other hand, look more like these kinds of things. They're all systems. City is a system. Forest is a system. Crowd of people doing their Christmas shopping is a system. Very much a self-organised one, of course. Growing tomatoes. So, we can break this down a little more and say these are some of the qualities of a mechanical system. It is discernible, transparent, objective, has finite elements, it has a known end state. That's probably one of the most important aspects. It has a known end state, deterministic, and it encourages statements of truth, such as that. If this, then that. It's predictable. These are mechanical systems. Organic systems, on the other hand, look a little different. And I'll do these side by side in a minute. They are complex, opaque, subjective, non-finite elements, unknown end state, non-deterministic, encourages questions and observations. If this, then what? So instead of saying statements of truth, if this then that, we can only make guesses, which leads us to experimentation, if this then what. So we see them side by side. Give you a chance to just take that in. They're pretty much, each of them are opposites of the other. So again, you have lots of time, you'll be talking now. Identify and categorize systems in your workplace. So given this set of criteria for identifying a mechanical system versus an organic system, we can look at some of the procedures and processes and ways of working that we have, how the organisation itself is organised, how people are hired, how they're fired, all the different systems that we use within an organisation, which ones would fall under which category. Now, there's probably some grey area in between, but even within the grey area, you can probably zoom in a bit closer and say, well, this aspect is mechanical and this aspect is organic. So it's an interesting conversation to have, I think, when we sort of like analyse our own systems and how they fit into these ideas. So now we've got these different kinds of systems. What if we want to change the system? So we've got a system running, it's mechanical or it's organic, and we think we can do a better job with it. So we want to change it, or influence it, manipulate it, control it in some way, ultimately manage it, right? We want to manage it. What do we do? So mechanical systems, add this. Mechanical systems usually require experts. They require people who really know very deeply an aspect of that system, or maybe more than one aspect of that system. So expertise is very much required here. They benefit from control. You need to be able to control your mechanical systems. And they give great benefit for that. And the last one is responds to commanding leadership. So, this is the model really of the whole industrial age, building things, repeating, manufacturing stuff. They are, the stuff was all of those things, and they had experts who were able to design these things, they had experts who were able to make the things, and there was a very controlling environment and very commanding management, very hierarchical structures. When software started out, this was our model of working, this is how we work, this is what we knew to be effective. But software is not like manufacturing. It's a totally different ballgame. And we've struggled for decades now with a model of management in the software industry and many other creative industries that really just doesn't work for us. And so the movement towards agility is inevitable. And it didn't start with the Agile Manifesto, and it started way before that. People were trying out, experimenting with different ways of running companies and succeeding sometimes and failing other times. But there's plenty of literature that dates back quite a few decades on this. So when we've got our organic systems, these qualities, what do we need to do here? Well, I would argue that it doesn't require experts. Expertise is not something you can have in an ever-changing environment where there's always new technology coming along, new ideas to learn. I can be an expert coder in a particular language, but I'm not going to be much of an expert if nobody uses that language anymore. So there's a continuous process of learning, and what we're looking for in people is this idea of being an artisan rather than an engineer. These systems benefit from release. I don't mean releasing the software, I mean letting go of control. So in the previous one, it benefits from control. Organic systems do not. They do not benefit from control. They benefit by management being able to release and let go and trust and allow people doing the work to do the work. And they respond not to commands, but they respond to guidance and nurturing. So we're looking for people in the leadership roles now to be more like gardeners, creating the soil that the organisation and the products they're making can grow. So those are some essential differences, and again we can see them side by side there. So the next question, I think there's another question, would be once you've kind of taken a look at some of the systems you have in your organisation, you can answer the question, how are we managing those systems? Are we using mechanical methods to manage organic systems? Or are we really using organic methods to manage these organic systems? So when you've got hierarchical structures of managers telling other people what to do and how to do it sometimes, you're using a mechanical process which would work really well in the right environment, but doesn't work well when you're doing creative products. So software for me falls into, it's not engineering. So we've got this, it's a metaphor that we borrowed really. It's software is like building bridges, or it's like architecting houses. It's not like any of those things at all. It's more like painting a picture or making a sculpture or something. I don't quite know where we're going with it. A little bit more metaphor later. So organic systems are complex. If we go back to the Stacey diagram and Snowden's Kinefin diagram, they fall into the complex space. Always. The organic systems are always complex. Now, here we are. Nice quote. For every complex problem, there is an answer that is clear, simple, and wrong. And here's a beautiful answer of a clear, simple, and wrong answer of how to organise people inside a large organisation. We all recognise that, right? That's a clear, simple way of organising, managing, top-down. Difficulty here is when person R and person S, or person R and person W need to talk to each other. There's no real mechanism to do that except going via a line of management and getting decisions pushed down on you. So direct communication, direct conversation is rarer. Now we know it happens because there's the organisation on paper, and then there's the organisation itself that actually happens. And where we're not enforcing this kind of thing too much, we might just pay lip service to it, and it only comes to bear when we have the review and the rewards at the end of the year, and the managers are responsible for all of that. But on the day-to-day working, we do find that we have the conversations we need to have. But it's quite hard. We make it very difficult for the right people to talk to each other when we have structures like this. And we don't really explore alternatives. I hear, even from people in the Agile space, well, we have to have hierarchies. It's a fact of nature. I don't think it is. I can't find any example in nature that looks like that. But what about that? That's a different way of organising it. Same people organise now into cross-functional teams, perhaps, or even cross-level. So people get to talk to the people they need to talk to for the work they're doing at any given time. That would be a different kind of structure to explore in an organisation. Now, you might still have some nominal reporting structure in there, but what's happening is you're getting to probably come together with other people, not be in different buildings with the people you need to work with and talk to, and have regular dialogue. So we've got structures like that we could explore, possibly this one. This model, I recreated this picture from a picture I found once and could never find again. But it was based on a model of mentorship. So in this organisation, nobody had managers. You were not assigned a manager when you joined the company. You were recommended a mentor. And you worked with your mentor to learn a particular area of work, a particular skill set. And when you were ready to move on, you moved on. So everyone had a mentor, and pretty much everyone was a mentor for someone else. And what it allowed you to do is to cross-skill yourself very quickly. So if you were a software developer, but you felt like you could benefit from a bit more design, visual design that would help you in your coding, then you would find a visual design mentor. And so we had this sort of looping thing going around where no one's at the top and no one's at the bottom. This is sort of much more of an egalitarian structure. Really, it's real self-organisation. It's up to you to find the right mentor. And so this is another structure that we could be exploring that would open up conversation much better in the kinds of environments we have. But I haven't seen this, except for that one picture. So, we embrace this. So to go through a few aspects of things we need to consider and think about when we're working within an organic system. So we've got this complex problem, and we need to contain it in some way. We need to understand it, we need to work on it. So I want to introduce these 4 aspects here. Metaphor. Now, you won't find these in an Agile guide. They're bigger ideas, I think, that will probably contain many of the things we are familiar with. Fractality, experimentation, and oscillation. So I'm going to explain each of those terms a bit more. What's important about this picture is those little sticks that are coming out of the words to suspend or to hold the complex problem that we have. I'm not holding it solidly. They've got some space, they've allowed some space around that. So you've got this sense of pulsation. The complex problem changes, it moves, you can't bind it, you can't hold it down. And to understand that a bit better, you could look at the contrast to that, which is kind of how we work at the moment. We've got our complex problem, we try and define it, we divide the labour up to get the work done, we work breakdown structures, and we accumulate this, we just sort of keep adding to it. But everything's held and bound very tightly, and if we don't get our definition right in the first place, we're probably going to fail, but it's really hard to get the definition right. So, nailing down is a term we often hear in these corporations. You've got to nail down the requirements document. It's probably the worst thing you can do, because we don't know. And dividing labour up, so you sort of split and you silo people, so your developers, your testers, your designers, your release people, and they don't talk to each other, they just do their bit of work, and it's all a handoff. Right? That's the work breakdown structure, hand a bit of work off to the next group of people. And I've worked in environments like that, and it's painful, it's hugely painful. Talked a bit about that in the workshop. So that's the contrast. So going back to, well, actually before we get that, this often results in that. Blame at the end. These big projects are all designed up front, and they follow the plan, they get to the end, and then we have something called a post-mortem. And the choice of language is such a giveaway, isn't it? You have a post-mortem when something dies. And so the post-mortems tend to be blame sessions, and people like to call them lessons learned, and that's a slightly better way of addressing it. But the lessons learned are left in the room, because everyone leaves the room, and now they're working on different projects with different people, so they can't carry the learning forward. The alternative in Scrum, as many of you know, is that you do retrospectives, and you do them frequently, once a week or once every 2 weeks, and the learning that comes out of that is carried forward into the next block of work. So it's directly relevant to the people who talk about it. So let's get back to our model here and look at the metaphor. So I said earlier that metaphor is really important. Metaphor allows us, it literally means to carry across. That's its literal translation, to carry across. So taking an idea from one sphere into another. And what that does is it opens up our thinking in the place that we are. So in the software world, we do well to find metaphors that help us to understand our work better. And some of the older metaphors that we have are things like engineer. Engineer is a metaphor for a software developer. Words like server, they're metaphors too, of course, aren't they? So we're finding something that's like the thing and naming it that. So we've got a bit caught up on this whole mechanical-minded engineering set of processes that we do. And quite a lot of software developers now don't use that term. They call them, there's a whole movement of people called software craftsmen, which is much more aligned with the kind of work that we do. Software development, remember, when we're doing it, we're always making something that has never been made before. There's almost zero exceptions to that. You might have to rebuild the system in a better language or something, but you're still making something that hasn't been made before. There's no reproduction. And so you don't really know what it's going to look like at the end. You can have a vision, you have a dream about what you want, you've got an idea, and you try and work towards it, and the parameters change around you. People's needs change, the technology changes. hopefully would actually build, if it's successful, you end up building something better than you could possibly have imagined, because you've got a set of minds coming together to work on that. So we need to find different metaphors for it. Now, the metaphors I'd like us to start thinking about are metaphors like artist. Now, I don't just mean for the software developers, I mean anyone who's working in these kind of environments, anyone who manages or facilitates or guides or coaches or puts systems together or creates learning programs. There's an art to all of that. And rather than just thinking of ourselves as sort of mechanical beings who've learned, a system of doing things and just sort of follow that step by step, we want to get out of that and actually start to be creative artists or poets, writers, dreamers, visionaries and dreamers. These are some metaphors that might actually, help us to think about how we do our work. If you say, as a software engineer, I am like a poet, how does that affect what you do? How does that affect the conversations you have? Probably greatly. I was telling Suzanne yesterday that when I very first started coding, years ago, I loved the look of the code so much that I would print it out and stick it on my wall, and it looked like art, and it looked like poetry or something like that. And there's a commonality, between poets trying to say things in the least amount of words possible, to express an idea, a big idea that people can imagine around it in the fewest words possible. And coders do that too. Coders want to use the smallest set of instructions to get the machine to do what the machine needs to do, and leave options open for additions onto that as well. So there are some similarities in that. So we're looking at fractality. What does that mean? It's a bit simpler actually to understand. So we're building systems, and the systems have roughly look something like this. They've got different layers to them, and the old traditional way of doing it is to have a team at each of these levels. So we've got a presentation layer team, and we've got a database team, and we've got backend team. And they build their pieces, and then we have this phase called integration right at the end. And it's interesting to track these projects, because you talk to any individual team and ask them how the work is going, and they'll usually give you a thumbs up, everything's on track. And it's only when we have to start integrating the pieces that things actually don't work. They start to fall apart at that point. Because we haven't done any end-to-end testing through it. We can't do end-to-end testing when you're not building end-to-end. So the fractal model says this. It says take a little tiny piece of each of this part of the system and get that running. You've got end-to-end. And we don't have to build the whole front end. We don't have to build every single feature. We just build one. And this is, of course, the Scrum approach to solving these problems. And in order to do that, you need to have people on your team who have between them all of the skills necessary. So it wouldn't help at this point to have a siloed organisation. You need people sitting down, talking to each other, playing around, experimenting, trying stuff out, and getting some flow going through the system. A term I've heard for this, which might resonate, is I'm just firing a tracer bullet through the system. I'm not much one for war metaphors, but I know that does resonate. Or a walking skeleton is another term that has been used. It's a walking skeleton of the system. And so, back into the system, we can then, if we prove that works, we can then do it again. And here's, example of fractality, perhaps an emergent system. We don't have to wait until a tree is fully grown before it bears fruit, which is what we're doing in software. Wait till the whole system is built before it delivers any value. The fruit tree will start to deliver fruit pretty early. The fruit will be small, it won't be great, but it is edible. So you have product there. And as the tree grows, the fruit gets better, the tree gets bigger. And it's sort of modelled on itself. Each element of that is similar to the tree in the large is the same as the tree in the small, essentially. So that's fractality. And then, of course, experimentation is it's like you're not being afraid. I think that's really what it is. So, when I said that software is like, you don't know what you're going to make until you get to the end. It's very like theatre improvisation, software development. Improvisers in theatre make stuff up as they go along. They might have a loose theme or a character or something like that. But the story, the play, emerges from the interaction. So they experiment a lot. But in order to experiment, you have to have an environment that supports that. Experimentation, that if you do an experiment and it doesn't work out, that shouldn't be cause for punishment, obviously. So we need an environment where people are not just saying that they embrace failure, but they actually do. But even the word failure, why do we even need to use that? You know, it's not failure, it's learning. Right? Embrace learning, and your pathway from A to B won't be a straight line. It will dip all over the place, it will fall down, it will go up, it will go sideways. But if we do it fast enough, if we iterate fast enough through these experiments, then we're going to get somewhere quite quickly. Whereas if you try and get it right the first time, you're going to work very slowly. So here's some experiments that never saw the light of day. That's actually pretty cool. It's a cooker on top of a fridge for a bed sit. I'd like to see that one. Hangover heaven. These are people who are trying out ideas. And they're funny, aren't they? We laugh at them. But people took these ideas quite far enough to have a prototype and actually try to sell them from that. No idea what that is. This? Again, if you've got a small house, you want to keep your baby quiet hanging out the window. I don't know what that is, but he looks like he's enjoying it. Alright, so here's, we all know this quote. Whether Thomas Edison actually said that or not, I don't know. It's the internet makes things up for us sometimes. But it's a good quote nonetheless. I haven't failed at just around 10,000 ways at once. So we need to do that. We need to be exploring and experimenting. You've got to contain it though. You can't just be exploring and the experiments get bigger and bigger. You want to do them so fast, like in a day. And that's why when you're writing code, you don't spend a long time sitting around talking about it. You're coding instantly. I'll give you an example. In a planning meeting in Scrum, people think you're just sitting around talking about what they're going to do. So it's too many meetings, a waste of time. But actually, in the really good planning meetings, the coders have their laptop open and they're actually writing code. And they can rattle off code in 5 minutes or something, just enough to do a proof of concept on something. So you're having this dialogue through the code as much as through the conversation. That's an experiment. You do no, not like that. I didn't mean that. So you failed after that 5 minutes, you try something else. Or you just have it, then you go, okay, well, explain that a bit better so I can understand it. So you can run off these experiments very quickly. And by the end of that planning meeting, everyone then should have a very clear idea about what they're building and why they're building it and who it's for. So the last one of these, oscillation, a little harder to explain, or it's a little harder to illustrate this one, but it's this idea of zooming in and out. So paired programming is a nice example of oscillation. You've got two people on the computer sharing a keyboard. One of them's using the keyboard and actually writing the code that has to be written at that moment in time. And the other person is pulling back from the detail of the code and thinking, how does that fit into the system as a whole? What can we, if we're writing this, there's something already written that's quite similar. Maybe we can extend or refactor so we don't have to write as much code and we've got cleaner code. So you've got this person kind of zooming out and looking at the bigger picture, at the architecture, at the design, and the other person is zooming in. And then they change places and they take turns in doing that and zoom in, zoom out. So we're looking at that idea, and these little coloured pictures at the bottom are essentially detail of that big picture. So if you saw that big picture as sort of a lightweight architecture that's not yet filled in, you fill this in piece by piece and you step back and you look at how it's working. Now, another way of thinking about it is this. So I did a search for unfinished portraits on Google, and there's lots of them. And what it tells me is that when painters were commissioned to paint portraits, they didn't just meet the person, do a sketch, go away, paint the picture and come back. What they probably did is, this is what this tells me, is that it was painted in iterations. So you've got an overall architecture, you can see there, of the pose and everything. But before this artist finishes the picture, he wants to get approval from the sitter that he likes the picture, right? And he's going to paint his face first, because that's probably the most important part. So you deliver the highest value, get the feedback on it that tells you where you're going next. So if you didn't like the face, you've got time to alter it. This one's quite fleshed out. I might have, see that's the zoom in of the detail. But you wouldn't just paint that head suspended in the middle of the canvas. You have to have some context for it, and that's your architecture. That's your overall design. But you don't have to have it all done. It can be very light touch. A similar one, it's a work in progress, looking at all the different ways we could have his hands. And then I think the little sketch here is the overall painting. So this is detail within a detail. To be sort of one man from that larger picture, and then zooming in further the detail of the hands from that. And so this picture seems like it was created incrementally with either some feedback from the sitter himself, or just feedback from the artist. Just to look at what the possibilities are and pick the best one. So it's sort of alignment, a lot of alignment going on there. So those are the things I think we can start to explore, play with, is metaphor, fractality, experimentation and oscillation. And so I've gone through this fairly quickly. I hope it was quick enough. Leaving you, I hope, with just some ideas to go away with in those questions. And I will share the slides here so you have the mapping of the two different system types and the questions and stuff like that. And just one last thing is this. I found this to be so important in collaboration. Let go of your own ideas, your old ideas, even the good ones. It's one of the hardest things to do. But that's what, for me, is the essence of collaboration, and we must collaborate if we're working in the organic space. We can't do things alone. So letting go of your old ideas. I think that's it. I'm done.